All right, you guys, I think we're going to go ahead and get started because it's 6:10. So as people join, I'll just, I'll just let them in and we'll just keep going. But if everybody is on mute, that is the best way that this will work, except for Uli. And that way you can hear us and we won't get any microphone feedback. So what we're going to do is we're going to start, I'm just going to introduce Fabric in case you're not familiar with Fabric. And then we're going to start our program of learning all about how awesome Uli is. So the first thing I want to share is what Fabric is. And we like to say we're democratizing fashion. We are a nonprofit and we're an accelerator and an incubator and a design studio. And we offer no minimum manufacturing. We are sustainably disrupting the industry. We're trying to reshore manufacturing. We do all kinds of really cool things here. We have given back to the community over $6.7 million in free and discounted programs and services since 2016. We've helped about 800 apparel entrepreneurs. Our mission is to help apparel entrepreneurs. We want to provide the training and guidance and all the resources that somebody would need when they're starting their clothing line. And that no minimum manufacturing is kind of the thing that brings a lot of people here because most factories have really high minimums. So we try to help people get started. And we provide scholarships into a training program that allows people to basically be their own production manager. And that's kind of the key to everything that we do. And we like to scholarship minorities, veterans, people with a disability, people with a financial need. Those are the people that usually get approved for some sort of scholarship into our program. We also have a free membership. So hopefully you're a free member. And when you're a free member, you get all kinds of benefits. You get to list yourself in the directory and participate in certain events and things like that. And then our apparel entrepreneur membership gives you access to our roadmap of tools and resources, which is really what we're known for. Nobody else offers anything like this. So it's a very unique roadmap. And then this whole thing is generated by income from renting out our event space. So normally we do these in person and you can actually see our event space. The reason that we're doing it virtually this time is because we have actually interviewed Uli for our behind the scenes a few years ago, and we did not get access to the video. Somebody else videoed it, and we ended up not being able to keep that video and to put it up on our website. We usually put up all of these so that you can watch them later. So I really wanted to re-interview her, and I just thought, well, let's just do it virtually this time so that, we're trying something new. But our event space, as you can see in this picture, you can actually use it to have a wedding or a music festival or a corporate seminar or a fashion show or anything. And it's bookable to, do all of these things. And that income is how we fund this whole entire place. We're a nonprofit. We're offering no minimums. It's a unicorn in the universe. And so the way we fund it is through renting the event space or through donations. So if you want to contribute even $5, that's something that really helps us. So please consider us, if you're having a birthday and you're looking for maybe one of those Facebook donations, to a nonprofit, always think of us as a nonprofit because we're helping to support hundreds of apparel entrepreneurs live their dream. So now to begin, we're going to interview Uli, and Uli is our pattern maker here at Fabric. She is more than a pattern maker, though. She is a technical designer. She's managed production. She does so many great things for brands and helps consult and advise them. She has amazing experience in the industry. She worked for Old Navy and LL Bean and Athleta and lots of small brands as well. So she's got experience doing all kinds of different types of clothing. She started her journey in Germany and then has moved all around the country here. And so I'm going to let her tell her story, but I'm super, super excited to introduce you to Uli. And I am always so honored and privileged that we get to work with somebody that is so special. She's more than just our pattern maker. She's my friend. So let's give Uli, I know you're all on mute, a round of applause. So it's pretty much just me that's applauding for you, but yay, Uli. Okay. So the first thing that I always ask everybody is to tell us in your own words, first of all, like, how would you describe yourself? Like, give us your own bio. Would you call yourself a pattern maker? Would you, what would you call yourself? Because I just kind of read a mini bio of you, but how would you like to describe yourself?
Well, when I think of pattern making, I think it's sculpting in 3D. So really, to me, it's kind of like it's an art, and that's kind of like how I approach it.
Right.
And I think of myself more of, a person who does sort of 3D sculpting, but also does, I just love helping people and support people and teaching and sharing my experience. And my experience is like probably 35 plus years in the industry, starting with, with an apprenticeship in tailoring in Germany. So in the picture here, you can see me and my mom, and actually my daughter, because I was pregnant in that picture. So anyway, so there we all are. And I put a picture of my mom in there because she actually was very instrumental in getting me started. She is a master tailor, educated in Germany. She always wanted to work in fashion, and she did an apprenticeship in tailoring, and she got her master in Munich in Germany in tailoring and pattern making and all those things. So she took the master class in the fashion, school in Munich. And then she worked in many, many different positions. In the very beginning, she was worked as a assistant in a fashion house. But most of her life, she worked in adult education, like community college, just in Germany. So I was always around, her working and teaching and all of the things. And I was always interested in making things. I loved crafting and drawing and all of the things. And she just sort of helped me. I did all the clothes for my dolls, of course, and, developed all these things, knitting and crocheting and, sewing and hand sewing at the time. And then at some point, I wanted to do something for myself. And of course, I wanted to make a blazer, which, is like completely silly. I mean, I was a teenager. What would I do with a blazer? But I just had this idea. I wanted to do a blazer. And my mom thought I was crazy, but she was like, well, okay, you can do a blazer. So I made myself a blazer and, and then later.
Wait a minute. I have to stop you for just a second because first of all, like the first project anybody makes is like something as simple as, a hair tie or something like that, a little square, square of a pillow or something like that. But you decided you were going to make probably the hardest garment you can possibly make. So that really speaks volumes of you. And I think that,
just like, the way I'm built.
I know.
I'm just going to do it.
I just love that. It's amazing. That's amazing.
Good. I can do it too. So yeah,
and it's in your blood. Like your mom having gone through all of that schooling and being a pattern maker and sewer and everything. It's like you came by it honestly. So the very first thing is I love to like make sure that people hear different people's journeys because some people get into this and they are into fashion or whatever career they're going to be in, and they feel bad if they hadn't been doing this from day one, and or they don't know what the right way to do thing is. Well, everybody has a different journey. Some people it is in their blood, like you, it is. Other people it isn't. They didn't get into, like I didn't get into fashion until I was in college. So it really is different for everybody. But I think it's really interesting when somebody is born into it, which is sounds like you really were. So I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just wanted to
No, it's totally fine. I mean, my mom and I still connect through that. We still love to, when we have time and we see each other and we're actually physically together, we love to talk about what projects we would like to do. And if we have enough time, we even do projects together. And, when we come together, we love to do, like one time we were there a few years ago and we both made ourselves sweaters out of a, knit material that we just stitched together. I made the pattern and she sewed most of it, and it was really fun. So we still love doing that.
That's amazing. Oh my God, what a great bonding experience.
It's so fun.
We just dove right into your childhood because I was originally like, Well, let's just say who you are now, and then let's go
Mhm.
start from the beginning. Well, we've already started from the beginning. We know that you were born into this, and
Mhm.
and now let's keep moving through your life. So
Yeah.
I am going to switch to the next slide, but to be honest with you, I need you to kind of guide me,
Mhm.
along the way because I'm not quite sure. So tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here.
Well, here you're looking at my very first sketches, of design. Maybe not the very first, but I just picked a few. I mean, there's hundreds, and my mom saved them all, and she gave me a whole pile, and I have them here now. And my family is still in Germany, so but she gave me a whole bunch. So at the top row, you can see just my big sketches of fashion that were always kind of in my mind. I would always draw these women and their daughters maybe, and then I would like think of stories. Like I would think of like who are they and what's their backstory. There were a lot of princesses, and in my mind I was definitely a princess, and I was just adopted, you know, because my real family was definitely royalty. But that's so funny. Anyway, but yes, I was drawing all these like elaborate, clothes, and and I wrote books and I illustrated them with big fashion, illustrations, and that was always something that I loved to do. And then in the bottom left, you can see this was actually something that I did. I just like did with like ink and a real like what is it called, like a feather pen? I forget what it's called, but
A
ink pen.
quill, like a quill
Like a
pen.
dick, yeah, like a quill. You
Oh,
just dip it into the ink, and then you start drawing with it. And I drew these miniatures. They were really, really small, of just landscapes, houses around us, and all of those things. And I actually ended up selling them. So that was like my first like income. I sold some of these, sketches,
how
and
cute.
that was very fun.
Oh my
So, and
God.
then there's
So,
just a little picture of me as a kid.
well, what age were you when you were doing all of these sketches?
Honestly, I don't remember. I was probably 10, 11, 12,
Wow.
something like that. A young teenager, maybe.
Those are really
Yeah.
good, like really good, especially for that age. And I have to
Yep.
say, since I know your daughter, that you look, she looks just like you. That is crazy. That is Olivia right
Oh my God, I love
there.
that so much because I never can see it. So thank you, Angela.
Oh my God. I can't believe you can't see it because, like, she's a spitting image of you. That is so funny.
Ah, that's great. So yeah, so
So,
my education
yes.
was so once I was done with school, I wanted to take an apprenticeship, and I couldn't find a place because it's very rare. Even back then, it was very hard to find a tailor that would take apprentices because it's a dying craft. So my mother decided, since she is a master tailor, she has the capability of actually opening up her own shop. So she said, to educate you, I will open my own shop and you can be my apprentice. And so that's what we did.
Wow.
So she taught me, and it was a 2-year apprenticeship, and we have made custom clothes for anybody that would come in and wanted to have custom clothes. So we did anything, from wedding to suits to all kinds of things. So
That's really incredible that you had that opportunity to work. So that's why you guys are so close. That's really amazing.
yes, so we worked very closely together, and also it gave me so much information that still is, I still have it. This picture, by the way, is the school that I went to in Hamburg. I had to go to a journeyman, an apprentice school, and this was the school for all the people that did tailoring, hat making, furriers. I forget what else, but people who did like anything that was sort of apparel and accessory related. So anybody that would take an apprenticeship in that had to go to this school, and I think it was 2 days a week we had to go to school, and the other days we had to work in the studio.
So, like, you were
So
with your mom, working with her at the same time you were going to this school.
yes, so
Got
I
it.
worked with her for 3 days, and then I went to school for 2 days. So I
Okay.
had to take the train into Hamburg and go to the school and then come back. So that was really fantastic. Then my next thing was I moved to the United States, and I was in San Francisco, and I was working for a leather brand. And I really always wanted to make shoes and learn how to make shoes because that's another thing. Maybe one day, I'll focus more on that. But it's just one of those things. I just love everything about shoe design. And so I really wanted to know everything about it. And there happened to be a teacher in Santa Cruz that was teaching shoemaking. I mean, you can't even believe how hard it is to find somebody who is willing to teach people, first of all, who knows how to do shoemaking in the United States, and second of all, who is teaching. So I was very fortunate. I had an opportunity to take these classes, and we made, I think, 3 pairs of shoes, and this is one of them
Wow,
that I
you
made.
made that. That's
So we had
amazing.
to make the pattern, we had to pick the last, we had to fit the last to our feet, we had to make the pattern for the shoe, we had to design it first, make the pattern, and then we had to cut it out and work with the leather and like work with super sharp knives, and we had to learn how to sharpen the knives so they were sharp enough, and then, had to do all the things and then sew it together and then pull it over the last and then, put it all together. So it was definitely a long process. I don't know how much really I've retained, but, it was so much fun. I just learned I learned a lot about that. So
So
it
I
was
think
really, really fun.
it's important to kind of explain to people who don't know anything about shoemaking what a last is, because
Oh, and last is basically it's a shape that is kind of it's the shape that the shoe is built around, and you have to pick one that is the shape that you want in the toe in the front. Maybe you want square, maybe you want pointy, maybe you want a heel. How high is the heel? And then you have to find it. You have to find it in the size that fits your shoe or whoever you're making the shoe for. And then you measure it, and then there's sort of conversions where maybe you have to add something to the last to make it fit better for the shoe that you're making the shoe for. I mean, for the person's foot. So it's like a long process, but yeah.
it's
So
it's kind
and
of
it's
like
very
if
hard to
you're
find those too. It's
yeah.
extremely difficult to find lasts, and then you're very lucky if you find one that is actually your size
It's kind of like
or the
if you're
style.
making
Or
clothing and you have a dress form. It's
uh-huh,
like that for shoes. And then you know how
uh-huh,
sometimes you have to pad your dress form to like add a
exactly.
bigger bust or
Same
something like
thing.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like the dress form version for the shoe
Yeah.
for the foot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when
Right.
you made these shoes, you got to use your pattern making experience because those
Mm-hmm.
are little pattern pieces there. So
Right, exactly.
that's
I'm not
awesome.
actually sure how much I knew about pattern making at that point, but I was already working and these were other shoes. So there you can see these are actually the lasts.
Yeah.
Some are plastic and some are wood.
Right.
Um, so these are just a couple of designs that I did. So anyway, so industry experience is next. So I worked when I moved to the United States.
Wait, did we cover all of your schooling already?
Um, kind of. I mean, I will get back to it. I also went to pattern making school in San Francisco. There was a pattern making specific school.
Wow.
It was run by these very, very old Japanese ladies, two Japanese ladies that were teaching pattern making. And I would go, it was an evening class, and I would go a couple of nights a week, and we would, just start from scratch of, the basic block skirt, the basic block, top, sleeves, pants, so, and how to manipulate them, all of those things. And actually, the company that I was working for sent me there because they were saying we need somebody who can take over pattern making, and they saw that I had, that I was probably a good person to send there, so they sent me there so that I could then get better. I was already making the patterns for them, but they said, well, you could probably benefit from classes, so they sent me there. So
So did they pay for it?
yeah,
Oh, that's so awesome.
they
Um,
paid for it.
and just to fill in anybody who might be new to pattern making, so a block is like a template that is sort of like the most basic pattern for a garment. So if you're going to make a shirt, you would have like a bodice block, and it's literally just the perfect fitting bodice, and it's used to make other designs from. So like that can
Mm-hmm.
become a design like this where you have pleats and a collar and all of that, and it can become something with poofy sleeves or whatever. But you always start with the basic block because it's like you got the fit down already. You don't need to reinvent the fit every single time. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
she was saying about the blocks. So,
Right, 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 right. So yeah, so there was, I moved to San Francisco. My sister was already there and I wanted to visit her. And so I moved to San Francisco and I was like, well, let's see where I can find work. I mean, my first job, I started working for an alteration place. Um, anyway, and then, I was too slow. They fired me after the first day. I was just not fast enough. I was not an alteration, sewer at all. And then my next job was I was sewing pillowcases out of old um, rugs, or what is it called? Yeah, rugs. So I was working for these people from Afghanistan that had a rug shop in San Francisco, and they had a tiny, tiny little place that had literally two or three sewing machines in it and a swivel chair in between, and that was it. So I was in that tiny little closet space sewing pillowcases out of rugs.
That doesn't
And they
sound
paid me by
legal.
the piece. I think it was like $3.50 a piece.
Oh my
So
God, this whole thing is a red flag for what
it
sweatshop.
was a completely red flag. Yes, completely red flag all the way around. Anyway, and then I forget. I think I just looked for another job, or maybe they fired me. I don't remember. Like it came to an end. I think I was ending up taking too much money because I was getting too fast in making those pillowcases, and they were like, "Nah, too expensive."
Oh my
So anyway, so here I was looking for another job, and then I found this ad, and this woman was saying, "Well, why don't you come in? It's a leather factory." And they said, well, why don't you come in and do a test? It was for factory sewing. I was like, I can sew, no problem. So I went in on a Saturday, and the British lady that, was there to, receive me. And then she wanted me to be there when nobody else was there because the product was a bit unusual. It was S&M toys for
God.
women. So there you go.
Oh,
So
that's
I'm
great.
sewing leather S&M toys all day, every day. So that was my job.
I love it. That's
Anyway,
hilarious. Oh
it
my
was
God.
hilarious. The funny thing about this is the product that they had was also something that my mom had worked on because it was a job in Germany. I know, it's so funny. It's so hilarious. I was like, oh yeah, this is not new to me. I'm familiar with this. Because it was, for my mom, we lived in the country and it was a freelance job she could do at home. And she was like making straight jackets and leather hoods and, you know,
Oh my
anyway.
God,
So
that's
that was in a room
amazing.
kind of like outside of our house. We were living in an old converted like farmhouse. And on the one side was our home, and then just across the hall was her, workspace. So it was not actually in our house, but it was just sort of like separate.
I
But anyway,
love
so this is
you
not
and your mom
completely.
even more.
It is so funny. Anyway, so here I was working for this leather company called Stormy Leather. And then, they were like, well, why don't you design a few things? So I started designing, and you can see in the image, like, those are some designs that I worked on. I designed many corsets, bras, girdles, um, shorts, underwear, anything in that vein I designed. Latex, leather, PVC, all the things.
That's
So I
amazing.
ended up being their main designer and I had a lot of fun with it. And then, I was also making the patterns for this. So that's when they were like, well, maybe we'll send you to a pattern making class so you could become better at this. And I also learned grading. And at the time, grading was still done. Angela, I don't know if you still know this, but do you remember this funny little machine that you would put on the pattern table, and you put the pattern piece in it
Yep.
and you move dials by an eighth of an inch and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of do markings? Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was so much work. And you worked with the tag paper, the really heavy, heavy paper.
Okay,
And
yeah.
then you had to cut that out. And then people had to like mark around it and cut around it and all of those things. It was just very, very ancient technology, Stone Age, basically.
So, okay,
Um,
before we move on, the leather thing is so important in your journey because
uh-huh.
I think it's really cool to hear somebody's journey because you eventually figure out like everything happens for a reason. And
Mhm.
just today, we were talking about leather because we have a client who's sewing or who's making a leather jacket, and the leather jacket is being sewn on our machines here, and the leather is really thick. And so we're struggling with this leather jacket because she had changed the leather. Like before, the original leather she was using was not as thick. So we could sew it pretty traditionally, like with two seams. Like when you sew something, you put it together, you stitch it, and then it goes like this, and you end up with lots of layers, right? It worked with the thinner leather, but with this new leather, it's too thick to do that with. So Uli was like, well, that's not really how you're supposed to do it anyways. When you sew with leather, you shouldn't be having so many layers because you're not sewing it like that. You have an edge that is kind of flat and then another edge that is folded, and you can glue part of that together before you sew it down. And she now needs to take this existing pattern for this designer that already has seam allowance built in for regular sewing. And that seam allowance now has to be changed to accommodate for putting it together this way instead. And most people don't realize any of this. And so, when you're a new designer and you're trying to get into this and you now have to pay for more work to be done, but it's not something you had expected. It's just part of the ball game here. Like those are things that are going to change the entire pattern. It's not possible to sew it without changing that seam allowance. So it's important to understand a little bit about everything before you actually start your business and you start spending money, because there's going to be places that you're going to have to spend money that you didn't anticipate. And it's stuff like this that most people can't anticipate. But the cool thing is Uli had this experience in her past. She understands how to do that. You're working with a pattern maker here at Fabric that has dealt with leather. She's dealt with knits. She's dealt with wovens. She's dealt with all kinds of different things and can help lend that advice and things that you might not otherwise ever have known. So I just had to throw that in there because it just came up today, and I was like, your past is coming back to not haunt you, but help you.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
A lot of I love that I have worked with so many different kind of materials and on so many different kind of projects and items, because you just learn along the way how to make things better. And and I love sharing all of that experience because it's fun, and I want to make sure that everybody's like getting the best product. So it's helpful. I mean, it's kind of not just helpful. It's like, as a pattern maker, you have to understand how things come together. You have to understand how they're sewn,
right?
Because otherwise you don't know what seams to do, or what seam allowances, or all of those details that go into a pattern. You need to have the experience of knowing how to sew and put it together. If you don't have that, you really are not putting together a really good pattern. Right. And you really have to think about it. You have to really think through how things come together and what is the most efficient way. That is actually another thing that I've really learned when I was sewing there. I sewed production, and so for me, again, it's just in my blood. I'm just always the person who wants to do things the most efficient way. So I always try to think about, how is this going to be the most efficient way, and how is it going to be saving the clients money? So if there's a very complex design, we talk about, well, how much do you want to sell it for? And then we work backwards, and we're like, well, if you want to sell it for this, then probably you have to get rid of some of these details and just really focus on the key design elements that are going to present your brand, and take away everything else.
Yep.
Because every design detail is dollars.
Yep.
That if you're at all thinking about low minimums and doing it in the United States is really, really high dollars. Yep. So anyway, that's always fun. Anyway, so this slide shows that these are all my designs. I had no idea that these were going to be on whatever that band was called. Beyonce was in it.
Destiny's Child. Yeah.
There you go. Destiny's Child. Anyway, I had no idea that they had picked, and I have this feeling that it's probably Tina Knowles that picked these styles for me, because wasn't she the stylist for them?
I think you're right.
And she put all these glitter things on there. They were not on the design, but I think they probably hand glued all of these little sparkly things on there.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, can you just imagine? But anyway, one day I was having a really bad day, and I went to the store and I was like, I'm just going to eat ice cream for dinner because I just need it. and I was very sad and upset about something. And I picked up Elle magazine and I just leafed through it as I was waiting to pay for my ice cream. And this ad popped up, and I just about fell over. It made my day much better. Let's just say that, because I was like, these are all my designs in a full page ad in Elle magazine. It was not an ad for, the Stormy Leather, but it was for the AIDS bracelet.
Oh,
The
oh,
the bracelet that they were selling to gain funds for fighting AIDS.
right. Got
Well,
it.
anyway, so that was very lovely. A lot of the designs that I did that were in movies, or this was Claudia Schiffer Photo Magazine with the bra that I designed. So I did see some of my stuff. Next was after I worked for Stormy Leather for a while, I had connections to the original founders of Banana Republic, and they were friends of mine, and they said, "Oh, we heard that you're a pattern maker, and we are looking for a pattern maker for this new company that we're starting. It's called Zoza, and we're wondering, if you'd be interested." And I was like, "Oh, sure, I'd be interested." So the Patricia Ziegler basically said, "Well, why don't we do this? I will pay you to design to make me a pattern and sew me an evening gown, and if I like it, then we'll talk about hiring you." So she gave me a kind of an idea of what she wanted. She brought in the fabric, I fitted, I made the pattern, I made her the dress, and she loved it. And then she hired me to be the pattern maker for this new brand called Zoza. And it was wonderful to work there. It was really, really fun. Mel and Patricia Ziegler are very, very amazing entrepreneurs, and they did Banana Republic that they then sold to The Gap. They did the Republic of Tea that then sold to some tea company. They did many, many different startups and very successful businesses, and it was just really inspiring to work with them. So I was the pattern maker for all the women's clothing.
That's
And
amazing.
this brand was a brand that was kind of ahead of its time. They were using all these technical fabrics into everyday clothing, something that's really, really caught on, and that now is kind of commonplace, where people use kind of outerwear, like athletic wear or outerwear apparel for everyday clothes. So you could wear it commuting or going to work, or we used swimwear material to make ball gowns or evening gowns. It was a really, really fun job. I really learned a lot there, and I really, really enjoyed it. But then, unfortunately, because it was so ahead of its time, it went under because their business model was to only sell online and not have a brick and mortar store, which, of course, is very challenging. So that
Oh,
did not work, and they closed.
we
So then
have
I had
a
to move on.
we have a question real quick here. Jenny.
Yes.
What years was this?
Zoza
Yes.
was in 99, 2000, 2001.
Okay.
Were you familiar with that at all?
No, I've never heard of it, but I was just curious, like the timeline of when it was happening.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if
This
you
was,
look at it, it does look like that's exactly that era, doesn't it?
And it has kind of a Benetton feel to it as well.
It
yes.
does.
But it might just be the advertising, but it definitely has
Yeah.
kind of Benetton.
I
Okay.
like
Right.
the catchphrase there, the sport of living.
They had this really cute thing for marketing. They had this tiny little tape that said "Be present, not tense," and they had
Oh,
it sewn
that's
inside all of their
cute.
garments. I thought it was very cute.
That's adorable. Wow.
hmm
I love
I'll
that.
never forget it. It was awesome.
That's
So it's
awesome.
just like, they really thought about it, and they really like thought through, all the small little details inside and out. And I can't stress enough how important it is, not just to design the outside of the whatever it is that you're doing, but the inside too.
Yeah, no kidding.
So very
Well,
important.
this next slide, for some reason, we have a spec sheet. I don't remember why we put this in here.
You know what? Maybe it was just because, I became a technical designer after
Oh,
this.
yeah.
So I was working a lot with spec sheets.
Mm-hmm.
So after this, I started working for The Gap, and I worked for the brand Old Navy. And I don't know why we're there, but anyway, just a quick thing. I worked for Old Navy is a technical designer, which is basically the person who works with the merchandisers and the designers, and is kind of like the person who makes sure that the fit of the garment is done well, the construction of the garment is done well, and we communicate with the overseas factories about specs, fit, improvements, etc., and we're ultimately responsible for approving it into production. So that was, what I did for Old Navy, and then after that for LL Bean, I worked there for menswear. At Old Navy, I was in charge of all of knit tops for women, which is probably one of the biggest category for them,
Yeah.
next to jeans.
Yeah.
And let me just say, I just about died because I was so stressed out. It took me a while to, get used to the numbers. Like I had to approve 500,000 t-shirts for production.
Oh,
And I can't even tell you how intensely stressed I was. And then you let go. You learn that it's fine. And, but in the beginning, I just about died.
yeah, you have all that responsibility for all that money if it goes wrong.
Oh, it's horrifying. Horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. But, they have a really good system. So you're kind of carried, you're supported. And, but in the beginning, it was just absolutely terrifying.
Oh my God. But from
So
leather
this
to
one is
knits,
just,
it's so different.
what?
From leather to knits, it's so different. Like
Yeah.
you've had to probably learn so much about pattern making
Yeah.
and the variations between.
But it's funny, like they didn't do any pattern making. Like
Right.
technical designers in
Yeah.
those brands, none of them do any patterns, nor do you have to know anything about it.
Right, right. But you're so good with knit patterns now. How did you get so good?
I don't know. I don't know. But that was not what we did there. I mean, I would look at patterns there, but, maybe I would, look at patterns and correct them and send them images or digitize and send it back. And,
right.
But
that's funny.
I don't know. I just think it's interesting that most people that work as a technical designer for brands like that don't know anything about patterns.
Right. Like, I don't know how you don't. I mean, it would be really hard.
I don't know either. I have no idea.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the things.
Yeah, Jenny's a technical designer. She knows.
I'm sure she does.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's interesting.
Yeah, but I know how the pattern works and how all that, so I don't understand how people don't.
Yeah.
If you fit, you have to adjust the pattern.
Yeah.
Like,
I totally agree.
How to adjust the pattern to get that fit right. So I don't get how people don't know that. Sorry, I turned off my mute.
Yeah, I think people used to just, take pins and pin things and draw on the garment and send pictures of that and revise specs and have the factory revise the patterns. Yeah. So they were just communicating, okay, these are the fit issues and here's what we would like to correct, and then push it off to the factories who clearly have pattern makers, and then just kind of cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah, I guess so.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, well, what are we looking at here?
So here we're just looking at, this was from when I moved on. I worked for Athleta, and this was just kind of like a color inspiration board for a collection. So it was just inspiration for what was inspiring me for colors, and then kind of giving them a Pantone range of what I would think about for the color palette. And this one was just technical sketches for just sort of like the general idea of what I wanted to present as designs, and with the Pantone colors applied. Oh. So I would just sort of like group things and apply colors, and so that was kind of like part of the design job. And I worked at Athleta. I was a very unusual employee because I was a designer and a tech designer and a pattern maker. So mostly, if you are working there, then usually if you're a designer, you don't really know anything about patterns or construction. You just know design.
Right.
But I would design something and already know how I would like it to fit, and I would create the pattern for it, and I would know how to construct it. So I had all the call-outs already. So I could do it all. The designer usually would hand all of that off to the technical designer, who then would, do the technical sketch, do all the construction details, and find the specs that have proven to work. So,
got it. And
here's another, just a page of, what I was designing at the time. So the merchandisers would give parameters of, what they thought sold well last season, and say, shorts with, short tights under it. Remember that was a trend?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still happening, but that was a very new thing at the time. And so we designed a lot of those. So we were kind of like given the direction of, this is what we want, give us something new. And then we would get a sprinkling of, but we also like this absolutely new trend and design into that.
Cool.
So upper left side, you could see there was a moment where compression tights were really, really like everybody was doing compression tights and would market it as, a great bottom to wear when you're working out hard, and it would just sort of compress in areas and not compress in others, and it would do something to the blood flow, which is all just BS marketing, but I designed it. I designed one. Anyway, this was the first pair of jeans that Athleta came out with, and I designed it. And I remember this because I had a very specific fit in mind, and I made the pattern just for the first sample. I already had the pattern. I designed the outside. I designed the inside. I designed the inside with, the thread color for the overlock machine on the side seam had to be purple because that was the color for the brand. So just the overlock thread, that you would see. So if you looked inside of the pants, you would see the purple thread down the sides. And it had purple, lining for the pockets. And it was just like everything inside and out was designed, from the thread size to the thread color that was slightly, off. And, it had the fit perfect. And I was like, if you make the first sample, you have to use this pattern. So the first sample came in and people just about peeled over because they were like, we've never seen a sample look this good, like a first sample. And it was a really good seller for them. And it was basically done with the first sample.
Oh my God, you never have that happen, the first sample. Yeah. That's amazing.
But I was like, I know what I'm doing. Just let me do my thing.
That's awesome.
I did it. And it was a really good seller for them.
That's great.
That was fun. And then I started I actually worked for several bike apparel companies. One of them was Luna Wear, I forget. And it was from the Luna. Isn't there like from Cliff Bar? Don't they have Luna bars? I think they did. Yeah. Or they might still. Anyway, and for some reason, it was supporting the bike team, the women's team that Cliff Bar was supporting. And they had a whole collection of bike apparel. So I helped them with that. And then I was hired as a consultant for Giant Bicycle, which I think is the world's largest bicycle manufacturer, and they're out of Taiwan. And that was the one and only time I got to travel to Asia. It was so wonderful. They sent me to Asia to meet the team there and meet, the designers over there. And what they wanted to do, they wanted to kind of push the women's bike apparel and the women's bikes that they were developing. So they wanted to have an American eye on the designs that came from Asia, because designs that are selling well in Asia may not do well in the US. And colors that do well in Asia may not do well here. Also, the fit is very different because the body types are very different. So they wanted help in resizing it and refitting it to the American market, because the American female has a very different body shape and completely different sizing than it would be in Asia. So they really needed help kind of translating that into the US market. So that's what they hired me for.
I have to chime in on that because Jenny's in the room here, and both of us worked for a company that had experienced this same thing. We both worked for the same company in LA, and I was there in the 90s. She was in the early 2000s. And basically, they had to make a whole second set of samples for the Asian market that fit completely different than what we sold in the US for the Japanese distributor. So you had to make everything twice. Yeah.
At Gap, they have a whole separate technical design department that refits everything for the Asian market.
Yeah.
Because they're in Asia and they can't take the American apparel sizing over there.
Yep.
It's a completely different item.
So that's a good thing for a designer in this conversation to understand too. If just to know that that's a thing, because that takes more money to actually have to make everything in different sizes twice.
I want to also say, conversely, If you're dealing with Asian manufacturers and you do not give them patterns for the American market,
Yep.
they will make patterns that they're familiar with,
Yep.
and that would be for the Asian market.
Yep.
So that will not fit here.
Yep.
So if you're dealing with Asian factories that have Asian pattern makers and they will make the patterns for you, you will have a very challenging time to get it to fit for the U.S. market.
Yep.
The first fit sample will not fit at all, and then you'll have a heck of a time communicating how you want it to fit for the American market. So the best way is always, if you're dealing with overseas factories, is to make a pattern here and send it over there for them to use.
Yep.
That is the fastest and most efficient way to get a product to fit for the U.S. market when you're dealing with Asian factories.
And we have a lot of designers who have experienced that, and they've practically at their wits' end, and they are giving up almost and thinking it's not possible because they've been trying for so long to get this one sample to be what they want it to be, but it's just so hard when you're working overseas like that. And so finally we can create something that is right and then just send it over there to manufacture. That's really helpful.
That's correct. Remember, we had a client like this. I forget what the brand was. It was an active. Remember the yoga wear brand that had these beautiful like crystal pockets in them?
Yep.
She experienced that. She was like, nothing fits.
Yep.
And she came here and we helped her communicating.
Yep.
So that is actually another service that we provide here, which is that if people are dealing with overseas factories or even with U.S. factories, if you are not familiar with reviewing samples from a factory and then commenting on that, I suggest you get help with people who have experience with that, because that is literally the job of a technical designer, is to communicate about fit construction workmanship.
Right.
Anyway, so this is the next slide. Is one of my next jobs was I was working for a woman who used to work, who was my boss at Athleta, and she and several other people from Athleta had left Athleta and started a menswear company, and it was called Core Kit. And she hired me because she wanted my experience to help develop. Design and develop, the collection for this brand. So I started designing for her, and here you can see is a jacket that I designed, and you can see upper left is the exterior and bottom right is the interior. So because it had a lot of different pockets, et cetera, so this was just kind of like the beginning of the communication with the factory overseas.
That's awesome. That's your technical flat. You always got to start with your technical flat.
I always need a technical flat. That's right. And I think this was actually the jacket. So it was a waxed cotton jacket. And I loved, I can't even tell you how surprised I was. That was probably one of my all-time favorite jobs, except for this one, of course. But, that was like, I loved being a menswear designer. It was so much fun. So much fun. Anyway, so
I struggled with menswear. I wasn't very good at menswear.
I love it. It's a fantastic product.
Yeah, Jenny.
Because you really have to be very detailed. It's like it's the subtle things, And here's just another tech sketch, of just a men's, athletic wear pant.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to come up with like a Lululemon kind of shape, seaming there.
Yeah.
With the pocket and the center back below the waistband, et cetera, et cetera. So,
right.
Yep. Here's another jacket. Just, you can probably go through these pretty quickly, but it's just a lot of details that need to be called out, and you can have a lot of different layers, and you have to have all those little call outs for all the, details.
And another a good teaching moment here for people who are new. The flat allows you to also kind of figure out if you can even make this in the price point you want to make it, because this is showing all the construction, like how many seams and operations are involved in making this, and how many pattern pieces are there. So basically, how complex is it, and do you need to simplify it to make it cheaper? So whenever you're starting, you always start with this so that is something that everybody can, first of all, decide, if it's possible and what it's going to take to make it and what exactly it is that you're wanting to make. You can communicate this to the people who are making it. So the flat is like an essential thing. And then the flat just goes through the whole process. It sticks with the pattern. It goes in the tech pack and continues through the whole process.
It's updated because you're going to change it. changes will happen.
Yeah, and
you change
everybody
the
that
stretch.
is involved in making your garment needs to look at that and know what it is that they're actually making. So it's
Right.
that's a really important thing.
And here I usually do it because I know what the pattern looks like.
Right.
You know, so I usually do the sketch too because I know all the pieces that go into it. This was this on the right hand side, you can see this kind of pullover, the zip pullover. That it was a design that I did for, and it was featured in the New York Times. I was very excited about that.
So excited.
Always fun to be like in Maine and like major newspapers or such.
That is so exciting. You've had some good media coverage during your career.
Very fun. And now, you know, I feel like here it's very fun. I mean, my passion really is sharing my experience and teaching and just sharing and making sure that with all the experience that I've had is to communicate with anybody that comes in here to really think about how will this be constructed? What would be a good fabric? What is the most efficient way to make this?
Yeah.
What if it was a tiny bit slimmer or wider so we can utilize the whole width of the fabric?
Right.
You know, all of those things can be reviewed. And, you know, what if we change the grain line? Would that make it better? You know,
right.
All of those things. It's all like conversations
so
that are fun.
Can you tell everybody how you ended up at Fabric?
Well, we moved here from the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, because my husband is from here and his family is here, and we had a little 1.5-year-old, and we thought, you know, now's the time to move so she can have some contact with her grandmother. And so here we are, and I couldn't find, there's very little work here in Phoenix for a pattern maker, I think. I don't know. But I was also busy just getting settled, and I had a very small child. And, you know, a couple of years later, she was in preschool. And I was thinking, well, maybe now could be a time where I'm start looking. So I went to one of the Phoenix fashion events, and everybody that I talked to was saying, oh, you need to go to Fabric. So I was like, Fabric? That sounds like a fabric store. Why would I want to go to a fabric store? That's odd. But, you know, then I took like a class for social media and, you know, whatever. I just had signed up for like 1 or 2 classes, and I met Gail Friend. So she had shown in the fashion show, and anybody who knows her just knows how amazing her designs are. So I was just floored, and I just loved her designs. And so when I saw her in the class that I had taken there, I had to go up to her and I said, oh my goodness, your designs were spectacular. I was so impressed. I'm so happy to meet you. And she was very sweet, and she was like, why don't you come visit me in my office? And she had an office at the time here in the building. So I came into the office to visit her, and then she said, oh, you know what? I think Angela and Cher might be looking for a pattern maker. Let me introduce you to them. And so she introduced me to you guys, and I think you hired me like that day.
Yeah, it was like perfect timing and fate. Like it was incredible. I'm so glad that happened.
Because somebody had just left, and you had like tried to hire somebody, but who wasn't local at all, and was trying to do it remotely, which really doesn't work for this model.
Yeah.
So yeah, it ended up being very perfect timing. And
Yay, I'm so glad. We have Gail to thank. And Gail was supposed to be here tonight, so her ears must be burning right now, so I don't know.
Exactly. I know. She's busy with her collection.
Yes, she is actually. I saw that. So I would like to now open this up for any questions. If anybody has any questions for Uli about her journey or about pattern making or anything. So feel free to ask. And you could just unmute yourself to be able to do that.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes.
So that was actually all very fascinating, and I kind of connect with your story. My mom did all of the sewing for our family. She made my dad suits, and she made my brother matching, you know, suits to go with that, but they wore shorts, dresses, and my sister. And
my mom did that too.
Yeah, so she got me started sewing when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I didn't take to it at first, but that was the area I took home ec. So I took home ec, and then I think I had a teacher that was like teaching me the technical stuff versus my mom, because my mom pretty much taught herself how to sew. Mm-hmm. And so I did that all the way through high school, and I was going to go to school to be a fashion designer, but then I made different choices. I didn't do it. And I've always had these things in my head. Like I'd look at a dress, that would be better if it was done this way, or that would be better if it was a different fabric, or that, I've always done that. And I made my own clothes for years. I would just get the very easy Vogue patterns, or I'd get the Vogue patterns and make things, but I would find unusual fabrics to do it. Like I used a lot of upholstery to do it back in the 80s and 90s, back when I was in Kansas and there wasn't much, it was quilting fabric. That was all that was available. So fast forward to now, I still have had this in my head, and I really didn't think it was possible before I found fabric. I just, it's one of those things, that was that thing that I didn't do, that kind of passed. And my mom she died a couple years ago. She died during COVID. And she was sick, but she was looking at me and she was talking and said that, she's like, oh, you always dress so nice. Oh, we kind of got talking about it. And she's like, well, you can still do it. I'm like, no, Mom, it's too late to do that. And she's like, no, you can do it. If you really wanted to, you could do it, And then I found fabric, and I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. That's all the things that can teach me to do what I need to do without having to go back. Because my mind was like, I'm not going back to school to do this. Like I just, with life and that's not possible. So I have this pattern, and I made the pattern for this scarf. Let's say I have a pattern myself. I've kind of roughly made it. Do I just bring it to you and you make it to fit? I'm sure that may need some tweaking a little bit. I know how it needs to be cut on the grain. I actually got paper from you, I think a few months ago. Okay. So that's what I've used to make it at this point. And now I'm ready to go the next step, which is whatever the next step is. So, I'm still learning this.
Crystal, before we talk about this, I want to use this as an opportunity to say one more thing. So Uli, all of that experience that she's had, she's done pattern making by hand for her whole life. And recently she had at Fabric she's learned CAD pattern making. So we have the Gerber program here, which Gerber, owned by Lectra, is the software that most industry people use, to make digital patterns. And so all of our patterns are digital now, and Uli knows how to work with Gerber now. So when somebody comes to us with a paper pattern, we just need to get it into the CAD system. We have a digitizer. So it's a table where we can actually copy your pattern. We're basically plotting the different points and it's going into the computer. And then we can work with it in the computer to make changes, to lay it out on the marker so that it's ready for cutting, to grade it into different sizes, to do anything that needed to be done to the pattern virtually. But what that means is that your pattern will be a digital thing so that you can actually send it to any factory that you want to work with. So when you grow out of Fabric and you're done using the resources here, and hopefully you have thousands of orders and it's too much for us to fill because we're just here to help people get started, then you can actually take your graded pattern on a marker with all of your sew by sample that's ready to go with your tech pack and everything, and just digitally send it to a factory that specializes in making the kind of product that you make, because you're going to get a better price when you're making something at a factory that specializes in what you're making. But you're allowed to make small batches at Fabric to get started. That's why people start here, so they can get all of that intellectual property that's needed and be able to test the market with a few pieces and then hopefully move on, one day. So what we need to do with you is get you into our new system, because we actually have, and I don't know if you're already in it, but we have our roadmap now. And our roadmap is not only going to guide you through what is the next step and how do you get your pattern to Uli so that she can actually take it and, do what she needs to do with it, but it's also our CRM system. So we can only work with people who are in our roadmap because it's like a system that allows us to see where you are in the process and to make sure that you've filled out all the right documents and that you've done your due diligence. Because as a client or as a designer, as a brand owner, as an apparel entrepreneur, whatever you want to call yourself, there's certain things that you are responsible for and certain things that we're responsible for, or whoever you're working with is responsible for. And those things that you're responsible for are more like administrative duties. So you need to know how to fill out a form, like a request that you want, Uli to make a pattern for you, or a request that you want us to sew a sample, or things like that. So that roadmap walks you through how to do all of those things, and also how to do some things on your own that you can save money, like sourcing your materials. You could pay us to do any of those things, but that roadmap is filled with everything you would need to know to do some of those things yourself, the stuff that you can do yourself so that you can save money. It's not going to guide you on how to make your own patterns, because that's obviously going to take years and years of work, but it's going to guide you on how to do the simple things like spec a garment, like measuring properly, or how to source your materials, or how to fill out a cutting ticket, or things like that. So what we need to do is get you in there and start using it, and you can join me on those Friday afternoons at 4 o'clock, and I can help you with that and help you understand how to use it and everything. So that's your next step.
Things, but I know there's things I still need to do. I'm not sure what do I do first.
Yeah.
And when I first started on the roadmap, I didn't have even the idea, and I didn't have the pattern.
Right.
So I kind of went and I was like, let me take a step back and decide what I'm going to do first, and do that, and then I can take that and go, down that journey.
Okay, so just join me on that Friday, and I will help you know what you need to do next.
Well, tomorrow, then you'll be doing it tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think it only allows you to sign up 24 hours in advance. Go ahead and give it a shot and see if it'll allow you to sign up. But if it doesn't, let me know, and I can just send you the direct link. Just send me an email, and I'll just send you the direct link, so you don't have to worry about it.
All right.
So Jenny, you have your hand raised. You have a question?
I actually have 2 questions. Lily, I remember speaking to you years ago when I was working on the Gerber there. What programs have you worked on? Because I know that you didn't, at that time, you weren't working with Gerber, something that. So what others?
So previously, I worked in the year 2002 or 3. I worked with a system called PAD.
Wait, are you guys hearing her okay? Uli,
No.
you sound really muffled. I don't know why.
I don't know either.
Wait, you covering the mic?
Yeah.
You know what?
Oh, there you go. Oh, wait.
Better?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I worked with a system called PAD many years ago, PAD, and that was very, very easy. That is very intuitive and very easy, and I think it's not that expensive as a pattern making, digital pattern making tool. And isn't that what Jamie works in?
Yeah. Or does she work in Tucatec? Is it Tucatec or PAD?
No, it's
okay.
PAD. It's PAD.
It still is really muffly. I don't know why.
No, I'm gonna put in my headphones because sometimes. Oh, maybe. Hold on. It's running out of energy. My computer is old. Let me put in my headset because sometimes it just works better. All right, better?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so I used to work in PAD, and that was very, very easy and very simple, and it's very intuitive. I remember learning that really quickly when I was working. I just started working for a small company, kind of similar to this, actually. They took on smaller clients, but they would also facilitate, they had some connections with overseas factories, and they had their own factory. And so they kind of would bring some items that were better suited for Asia, they would bring to Asia. But anyway, I worked with them as a pattern maker and a tech designer. So they had the pad system and I worked in that. And then I didn't work in any kind of digital pattern program at all until about a year and a half ago. And that's when I started here working in Gerber. And Gerber is more expensive, I believe. I think it's a pretty pricey program to have, but it's also a very good program. I don't have any issues with this. And I took, I think, a class for a week or maybe 10 days, like half days, where I had a wonderful online. It was an online thing because, of course, it was, COVID. But I just think the one good thing that came out of COVID is that people are really utilizing virtual meeting and virtual teaching and virtual classes. And I think that there's just a wonderful place for that. So I took this virtual class and I learned kind of how to do it. And I still remember how excited I was when I made my very first pattern. I think it was a mask. I made a mask pattern. How timely for COVID in the COVID. So we had to make, like, we were like, oh, we need a mask. And I created a mask pattern just about, like, I was so excited.
Like, I made a square.
Oh my God. It was so amazing. Anyway, then I just sort of started working more and more in it. And then now I've even taught myself how to do grading. So now I'm really, like, I don't know. There's still things that I don't know, but there's many things that now I can do, and I'm very happy that I get to do it. So, and it's actually really fun.
We have the latest
I still work
version.
With paper sometimes, if you have to take a pattern off a garment and then you have to digitize it. But so, and it's kind of like, sometimes it's a toss-up, if you start working in Gerber to create a pattern, or if it's faster to just do it in paper and digitize it in. It's kind of like, but eventually it all ends up digital. Thank goodness, because then you can't lose it.
Can Illustrator now transfer to Gerber?
Honestly, I don't know, but I do know that Gerber can transfer into Illustrator.
Okay.
But so technically I'm thinking maybe, but I'm not that tech savvy. That I don't know, but we've had to convert some Gerber patterns for a client who did all the their pattern work in Illustrator. So I know it is possible to convert it to work in Illustrator.
Yeah.
And I know people who do all of their pattern maker in Illustrator.
By the way, Jenny, I don't know if you know about the latest version of Gerber, but like, we're now able to actually virtually stitch up our clothing on 3D avatars, and actually,
that I want to play.
Yeah, it's incredible. You can see what it looks like. You can actually see the tension map on the stress areas on the garment. It shows like if something is pulling or whatever. What the beauty of that is, for anybody who doesn't understand this, is that normally when you go and you make a sample, you make a pattern, and even though Uli is like the best pattern maker I've ever seen, the first pattern is not perfect. The first sample you make is never perfect. You always have to do a fitting. Then you have to make revisions to the pattern, sew it up again, do another fitting, and usually that takes multiple times. Well, the cool thing about this software is, like, you're doing a virtual fitting on a virtual garment that has been virtually stitched up. So you're saving all that money from having to sew up that first revision, or that first sample to see how it fits. You're actually just looking at it virtually and going, oh, I'm going to make a few changes before we actually have to sew up that first one. And it helps save you from having to spend so much money on revisions. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. And we also have been working in Clo, which is another program with a 3D, and we can actually import the Gerber pattern into Clo and then put it on the 3D avatar. And you could probably make your avatar certain sizes. I'm not working into that. That's a different person here, Bria. But that way, if you have kind of the proportions right, you can at least say, oh, you know what? It looks too long. Let's shorten it by an inch. So you can do that virtually rather than having to wait for the actual sample to be made. So I can see the value of it. Still looks a little clunky, and it's not exactly like it would look in real life, but it gives you some guidance and some insight as to
maybe the lapel looks too wide, or, you know, there's like certain things that you can see already that you can see, like, before we make the sample, let's tweak a few things, or place the pocket in a different way, or things like that. So it's definitely a helpful tool.
You know, Chloe is so realistic, though. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe how realistic these things can look. And the benefit of Chloe too is that you can make your own personal, like, they're more personal. The avatars are just they look really nice. And then the other cool thing about all of this cool technology is that we're now working with. So Sherry, my co-founder, has a printer down the street. And what this all enables us to do is to actually, after Uli's made the pattern, you can embed your own prints into the patterns and just print on the fabric, print the pattern pieces out with your print already laid out onto the pattern. So that enables you to make something very unique. Like you can place whatever you want, wherever you want in the pattern, instead of buying a roll of printed fabric and then placing your pattern pieces on it and hope you get your print where you want it. This is it's called an engineered print. You can just engineer your print where you want it onto the pattern. And you can virtually stitch it up in Chloe or in Gerber and see what that print's going to look like, and manipulate the print, scale it, rescale it, make it what you want it, you know, to be like before you actually go and print that and sew it up. It's really amazing technology.
It really is fantastic. I think that doing placement prints, I mean, you see it more and more. People do it all the time now. Yeah. Remember the yoga thing that I just sent you that you were saying, oh yeah, I'm totally familiar with them, Angela?
Yeah.
Anyway, they have placement prints on all of their stuff.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, that technology is incredibly helpful, and a lot of people are utilizing it, and it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah. And
so you said
go ahead.
Printing on the pattern itself?
Yes.
Or you're printing where it would be on when you cut it out of the fabric?
Yeah.
Well, you place it on the pattern piece, and then you can send that marker that, you know, that where you have, you know, laid out all your pattern pieces, like virtually, and then you place the print file onto this, and then you can send this digital file over to the printer, and the printer will then translate it and print it on the fabric.
Can you guys see my other tab open right now? If I okay, hold on.
I know another question before you guys move on.
Let me close this tab. Hold on. If I open this other tab, does this, okay, I don't know if that's going to show. I need to show you. I want to show you guys what this looks like. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I'm going to present this tab right here so you can see. I have a visual for you. Okay, so right there. Can you guys see this?
We have to go. Yes, we can.
Okay, so that is the printer printing the pattern piece. Like, especially, like, see the one on the left there? Those are cactuses and stuff like that printed right into a skirt. The one on the right, you can see there's sleeves with the print printing right into it. The middle one is a skirt that has the splatter paint on it. So you can see it's the outline of the pattern piece that you're printing. And that way that gets cut and sewn. And actually the Sherry's factory has an automated cutter too. So the automated cutter actually sees those pattern pieces and cuts around it, has a camera on it, and it like follows those outlines and automatically cuts those pieces out. It's really, really cool.
So that's the fabric, and then you would sew that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
To make the skirt or whatever.
Yeah, those are the pattern pieces. So Uli had to make that pattern first. That middle one, that's a skirt. Uli made the pattern that she made in Gerber, and then we placed the prints on in Chloe. We actually like put those prints right in there onto the pattern pieces, and then we just sent that file to the printer. So it's just printing the print right into the pattern pieces, and then you're just cutting out those pattern pieces and sewing them together.
Do you have to have special fabric for that?
No, and that's the cool thing is that most of the time when people are doing special prints on leggings and things like that, they're doing sublimation printing, and sublimation printing only prints on polyester. This printer is called the Corneat Presto, and it prints on almost any fabric. Like you can we printed on velvet. We printed on a faux leather. We're printing on cactus leather right now. We've printed on chiffon, on denim, on all kinds of different things. It's really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So my next question for you, Uli, is about grading
Mm-hmm.
and grade rules.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually have a hard time with clients because it seems to me like so many people have different grade rules. Do you come across that too, or do you have issues?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, usually clients don't know anything about grading.
So you can just do it.
So I basically just ask them to think of their brand and think of a brand that already exists in the market. And I say, think of a brand that you want to position yourself next to, and you want the same clients, and then go grab their size chart.
Okay.
But make it like not an obscure, tiny little company. Make it like a big established brand.
Something
Like, think of a big established brand that already is like successful in the market, that you think your product will be in the same bracket with, and you want the same customer. And then I'm like, grab that size chart from that brand, and then from that size chart, I will do the grading.
Okay, gotcha.
Because clients don't know anything about grading. I mean, how would they, right? I know that.
Because then, like, I do a grade roll, and then they're like, no, that's right. The X large is too big, or this and that. So I
usually ask them to give me a size chart that they want to emulate from an established brand that they think their product will be relating to, or they want the same customer.
Okay.
And I just work with the size chart, and then I just go from there. And then when I've done it, then I'm like, now you need to test the grade, because you have to see if this really works for your client, or if it's perfect for, the material or whatever. It's like, I do my very best, but we still need to make sure that it's right before. And that is called, we always do the size set. Right? I'm sure you've done this too. Big brands always do a size run and test it, because before you go into production, you want to make sure that the sizing is right. And graders, we do our very best to get it right, but maybe it's not perfect. And you want to catch those little things like, it looks like the neckline could grade a little bit more, or I feel like this. Exactly. So there's always something that you could probably fix, So it's just one of those things. Unless you've done something like at Old Navy and you have established grade rolls that are just like, and you still have to go in and are like, well, for this pocket, I'm going to change it because there's a reason or something. But in general, it works. So, but yeah, there's definitely like, you have to make sure it's right before you produce.
Yeah.
And that has to happen no matter what.
I always struggle because people are like, wait, this isn't right. Like, I give them my grade rule, and then they're like, wait, no, I'm not happy with that. So I'm like, how do you work around that? So that's a big use.
I just have them look at it, because they don't really understand what they're looking at. They can only see it if they see it in a garment, and then we can work on it.
Yeah.
To fix something. But just looking at numbers, who would know?
And anybody who's new at this is part of the roadmap. It tells you there's a step in the roadmap that says, go find your favorite company's size chart and upload it into your client folder so that we can see what the difference is between a small and a medium and a large and an extra large. Because is it a 2-inch difference between each one? Is it 1.5 inches? Is it 1.5 between these sizes, but 2 inches between these sizes? So that's giving us the prior knowledge we need to understand what you want, what kind of grade you want, without you understanding grading, So we say, go grab a size chart, upload it. And that's just a step in the roadmap. And then once you've done that, you go to the next step. So all of this is covered, in that roadmap.
Right. So do you think, Jenny, that people, when they look at the numbers in your size chart or in your grading, that then they were like, oh, I don't like this?
I've used with production before, where they were like, no, I'm not happy with how that turned out.
Well, you have to check that before you go into production.
Yeah.
You have to make the investment to have some samples made up in the smallest size and the biggest size, because that's where things show up the most.
Yeah.
Variations from the base size. Then you go smallest, largest, and you have to have a person to put it on in that size. So, but I would not recommend for anyone to go into production without seeing some sizes made up as samples. It's just a cost of doing business.
Yep.
Before you lose money from all of production because you don't like the way it turned out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it was one company went into production, and I told them, don't, like, you check this before you do, and they were like, no, we're just going to do it. Okay.
I know.
That happens a lot around here too. People can't afford to sew one of each size, so they take a chance. And that is part of like this whole experience. It's like, if you're going to get into this business, you need money because there are a whole bunch of things you're going to need to pay for that are just making sure it's coming out right and it's ready for production. And then there's a whole bunch of things that are probably going to go wrong in production as well. And you're going to have to eat that. And big brands, they account for that. But little brands, they don't have the extra money to do that. So this is a scary industry to get started in, you know.
But I'm always like, you know what? If you don't have the money to make 2 samples to check,
then you don't have the money to do anything else.
You don't have the money to do anything. Then you can't buy production fabric, and you can't pay for production.
Yeah.
And you don't want to waste it because it's going in the garbage.
Yeah.
So nope.
Yeah.
This is not the place to save.
No. All right, you guys, anybody else have any questions? We're on 7:30 now, so we're probably going to wrap it up unless anybody has any other questions. Awesome. Well, again, Uli, we are so, just honored that you work here and so proud to have you as our pattern maker. And I'm proud to have you as my friend. And I thank you for like sharing your whole life with us again. We're going to put this up on our website. So if you know anybody in your life that you think should watch this, they could just go watch it on the Fabric website under events. Under events, you'll see behind the scenes. There's a whole page dedicated to these, and there's all kinds of past ones that are up there. Next month, we're going to interview the owner of the store Bunky Boutique. Her name is Rachel. Yes, she's amazing. And so we're going to, if you're interested in retail, she's going to be an expert she's been in business for a long time. I think it's probably been 10 years or more at this point. And so you'll hear from somebody who's been there and done that and kind of, learn the ins and outs of the retail industry too, of owning a boutique. And then the month after that, I think we are going to be learning about the metaverse with an expert. So I'm just waiting to confirm that, but yeah, so each month there's somebody different. So make sure that you are, and then the following month, we're learning from a textile print designer. So if you've ever been interested in that, that's another one. So just make sure you're coming to these every month, and they will probably return back to in-person again. But pay attention to what the invite says, because it might sometimes go to virtual, sometimes be in person, sometimes be a hybrid of both. So just make sure you pay attention to that. And thank you guys all for joining us. And we're looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Good to see everybody, or not see everybody, but
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.